Hello and welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me again, the not the midget this time around, and we actually I got someone clarify what a midget is and a dwarf is. But anyway, I want to finish the introduction with me, Pascal Floor, the brown guy from Berlin, because I'm so tanned already, and the pale, I can't really tell from your webcam. It could very well be that you are really pale. The pale guy from the island, it is Steve Hall.
Hola.
Hola. Right, yes. No, you've been to Belgium, not to Spain.
I don't know what high in Belgium is. It's like in Belgium, it's a bit weird.
Hola.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. I just brought up.
Because they're like a mix of like French, German, Dutch.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, I was surprised how French everyone sounded. I was like, oh, okay. I expected them to sound, I don't know, more German.
Yeah, don't know. Belgian people are weird ones. No, I have like 3 clients from Belgium, and Wes, our typical listener here, and Patreon supporter. Always need to emphasize that as well. And if you want to be a Patreon supporter, you can find the link up in the corner as well. But yeah, he's from Belgium. So we have a lot of Belgian people. And you got a client from Belgium as well. So Fabs, yeah. What is going on with all the Belgian people? They are into lifting. Props to the Belgian guys.
I didn't really see anyone... Yeah, they didn't see anyone like hench when I was there. I was like, I'm the biggest guy. I was probably the biggest guy. And I'm huge, so that's not surprising. But but anyway, let me not keep talking down that line.
Yeah, let's not toot our own horns too much about how big we are.
But I went to Ghent, so that's why we're talking about Belgium, and it was ridiculously sunny. So I should have somewhat of a tan. This is me tanned, basically, which isn't very brown.
An English tan.
This is an English tan.
Yeah.
But it was like over 30 degrees for the like 2 days, so we're out on it all day. So I did get a little bit burnt, maybe a little bit burnt, but not really much.
Isn't Belgium also known not just for chocolate, but also for beer?
Yeah, it's quite good for beer, I think.
All right.
Interesting because I don't drink. Well, yeah, I don't drink, and I don't drink beer. Yeah. And Charlotte is on like a no alcohol until she goes on holiday.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't have an ounce of the Belgian beer.
So that holiday didn't count then?
It's funny. I was kind of calling it a holiday, and I was like, but this is just, I've gone away on Friday, I've come back on Sunday. Is that really a holiday?
Yeah.
It's like a weekend
away. Absolutely. Totally. Just a weekend trip.
Yeah. Which I want to do more of, actually. I was thinking like, another client of mine was like, you should come to Sweden. Elias was saying, you should come to Sweden and we can hang out. I was like, actually, like, Europe's so close. I should really take more trips, like on weekends, just to venture around. Because
especially you have the luxury in London with the airports. You have so many airports there. There's always a flight that is cheap going somewhere.
Yeah. And the Eurostar was actually quite, it's nice being on the Eurostar because you can just, I don't know, something about flying, I obviously don't like it, but the Eurostar is super easy. Although I kind of wish it was just like getting a train like normal, but you still have to go through security and queue up, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass.
I wasn't aware of that, but do you think it has something to do with the past and European terrorism or terrorist attacks and stuff like that?
I guess it makes sense. They have to check like your passport and everything because you're crossing borders.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's easier than flying because I don't know, for a weekend you just have like a small suitcase. Oh, I guess it's similar to flying in many ways. You're just not in the air.
No, that's true.
You still have to arrive like 60 minutes before your time and whatever to get through all of the palaver.
But I mean, you're sitting down, and we talked about it in the previous episode already. There's just something about sitting on a train that I do like. Don't know what it is. There's just something about that.
And yeah, trains aren't, I don't know, there's no turbulence. It's all just smooth. You can walk up and down. So yeah, it was pretty nice. Ghent's beautiful if people haven't been before, especially because the weather helped. But there's a nice canal. Architecture's really nice. Like you said, chocolate. But I don't think we had any Belgian chocolate particularly. We had a waffle, some frites. But to be honest, I actually said this to a client as well. I was like, you can get Belgian waffles like in London, but probably tastes exactly the same, and I prefer probably like, I don't know, Nando's chips to the ones I had out there. They weren't particularly special, so the food actually wasn't particularly great. It was more the location.
And did you rape some kids?
Where did that comment come from? What made you think that could have happened?
Have you never heard of that story?
I don't think so. So it just comes across really wrong now.
Yeah, that's actually nothing to really laugh about, but that's just my dark humor. So there was a time in Belgium where I can't really tell you all the details about that story or period of time, but this is one part which Belgium is also known for, that someone was kidnapping kids and raping them in the forest or so.
Did not know that one.
And yeah, this is where Belgium got a bad rap for that one. So yeah,
no kids were raped.
Chocolate, and kids being raped. So yeah,
just plain old eating and venturing around the city.
Maybe I will cut it out. Maybe it's too dark or not.
It might be. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know where to go from here. I'm a little bit lost. How was your week?
Yeah, no raping of kids on my end as well.
Good.
Which is nice, I would say. No, but other than that, I just came back from my cardiologist another time. So had a long-term ECG just recently once again. It was the second time around in just half a year. And this time I needed to do I have no idea what's it called in English, but when you are active, so you're sitting on a bike,
right,
and you're giving it your all, and they
VO2
have like an
type.
Yeah, kind of, but it's not really VO2 max because, of course, your breath or and stuff like that isn't taken, right? So how much you exhale and stuff, but it's more like just the heart is being monitored, and whether there are some discrepancies or weirdnesses happening while I'm active. And it was, so I'm not used to do any kind of cardio, so I was sitting on a bike, and it was increasing by 50 watts every minute, right? And it started off with 50 watts, super easy, no worries whatsoever. I still had a chat with that girl there, and then it increased to 100 watts, still right, 150, and slowly you started to become out of breath, right? And I did train legs yesterday, so that was the limiting factor. I got up to 300 watts. My heart rate was up at 170, and she wanted to actually push me to 190, but I needed to call it because my legs just gave in because of yesterday. They just accumulated so much lactic acid. It was just like painful to then try to continue having that pace, because I mean 300 watts is not easy whatsoever. And then she told me about, because I saw once that video of Robert Försterman, you know, that guy with the what's it called again? Myostatin deficiency.
Okay.
In the legs, that velodrome cyclist.
Right.
Like with massive legs, right? There's a video of him doing 700 watts for 1 minute. And I did 300 for 1 minute and was already like, holy shit, this is hard. Like double the intensity, and that was crazy. Then I asked her what's kind of normal, and she said like, okay, the highest we ever had was someone with 600 watts, but he was also a professional cyclist. And yeah, but she said like cyclists who do it like as a hobby are normally able to push it up to something like 400 or so, but that's crazy already. And yeah, I was just sweating massively and being fully out of breath. And yeah, not the results weren't really as clarifying as well. So had a chat with my doctor afterwards. Still some extrasystoles happening there. Nothing that really clarified whether everything is all right or not. The long-term ECG was having some weirdnesses as well. So a lot of extrasystoles, and even my heart rate was elevated like chronically, which is something I've never had in the past. My heart rate was always like on the lower end of things. I don't know whether it was because it was super warm on that day, like super warm, and I was riding my bike for like 2 hours or so, and also doing some construction work on my bike, and that outside at like 35 degrees. And so you have to do a log beside that so that you can somewhat interpret what you've been doing when the heart rate is elevated or when something is happening. And I don't think that she was aware of how intense the construction work for me was, because I've never done it. I put my exhaust on my motorbike on that day. It was super warm outside. The next day, I went to that gym where I usually don't train, and I trained at 10 or so, and it was freaking hot in that gym, right? And maybe it was just like I had elevated heart rate due to the stressful environment, and I'm sweating constantly at the moment. So
I can't wear t-shirts. I'm just like, as soon as I put them on, I just sweat through.
So that doesn't make the fact that my heart rate was elevated like constantly like any better, like at all. But I also know from previous data from the long-term ECG like a half a year ago that this wasn't the case. Right. So the next step is we are going to do an MRI. So we did an echo already, did 2 long-term ECGs, now the activity ECG, and now we are going to do an MRI to also see the heart in it for itself, whether there is some damage on the outside of the heart or so. And then we take it from there.
Crazy. And this all came from, I can't remember what it actually came from. Did you get...
It was just by accident.
Yeah, it wasn't even
just
like you felt anything in particular.
No, and still don't feel anything at all. It's just like... did a short-term ECG. There were some like weirdnesses going on, and then my mother-in-law, who did that ECG, that short-term ECG, sent me out to get a long-term ECG, right? And ever since then, we are running through different processes to get it checked out. And my doctor here, so the cardiologist, basically said like, Pascal, you are fairly young at the moment, and it doesn't necessarily mean that anything is inherently wrong with your heart, but that also doesn't mean because we have those weirdnesses occurring that we should just leave it at that and be like, yeah, you're young. That's fine. So we are not out to find anything wrong with your heart. We are just out to clarify whether there is something there, right? So you're not you're not seeking for something being wrong. So that's basically what she said. It's not like going out there and trying desperately to find something like, I knew that something was wrong. It's just to get some clarification going on, that we checked basically everything, and hopefully it turns out after the MRI that everything is all right, because that's kind of the last instance we're making. And then I already asked her what would be the next step theoretically if the MRI comes back with nothing. Then she basically said like, okay, then you have to go to a specialist with heart rhythm or heart arrhythmia, who specialized in interpreting that, and then taking from there. So
crazy.
Crazy
to think like people, we get how many listeners to this, like thousands of listens, and to think, I wonder how many of us could, including me, because I haven't had it done, could get that test and have to go through what you're going through, and how many people need to do it. Cool. Even it's kind of scary in that sense. It is,
and I'm always worried about after getting the results, because you don't get a clear result afterwards. It's always like, yeah, it's not looking great, but you don't experience any kind of symptoms, so you don't feel it. So you're just in the dark at the moment, and that's not a cool feeling. And everyone who has something or had something in the past where it was just like a little bit concerning, and you simply don't know what it is, and whether it is concerning, it's just like not a cool feeling at all, especially when it comes to the heart, for fuck's sake. It's not like my hip that can get fixed and then it's that, right? I mean, a heart nowadays, they have so much technology and they can do so much already that you can live a healthy and long life, even with a damaged heart and stuff. But let's not hope that it comes to that. That would just be devastating, to be honest.
Yeah, I know it. It's like any kind of result that you get back, you just get anxious, and then the body follows mind, and you feel worse for it. And it's just kind of like you end up placeboing yourself into like those, or noceboing yourself, I guess it would be, which is just uncomfortable. So, but apart from that, how's everything else been? You've been busy taking care of Katie.
Yeah.
And she's very heavily pregnant now.
Really heavily pregnant. So She was going to the hospital like on Wednesday, so last Wednesday. So not this, like 1.5 weeks ago that Wednesday. Need to do the math in my head. And because she had experienced a little bit of discomfort, and she just did too much still. She was just too active, and now she was kind of prescribed to just chill the fuck out. Netflix and chill, that's all you need to do for the next couple of weeks, because otherwise the child will come much too early, like 6 weeks too early. And that's not a good thing, because like first after I think week number 34, the lungs are fully developed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just don't want that the child is coming too early. If it comes like 3 weeks, that's most of the time all right, because in the last 4 weeks, I think they only gain weight. So nothing more will develop anymore, or at least not significantly. But I think that there's probably a purpose why the child is in the belly for like 9 months, and not like 8 months or so. And just due to the fact that I simply don't know the long-term consequences of a child being born too early, I'm a little bit concerned there as well. And I try to talk into Katie with some sense and be like, okay, man, just imagine what is 2 to 6 weeks of just chilling out on the couch in comparison to giving your child a healthy life.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not even a discussion you need to have. It's just like absolutely clear what to do. Like 6 weeks is nothing. Nothing. I know it sucks to just sit on the couch and watch some television shows, but it's not really a big deal, right? I mean, it's not suffering. It's just a little bit like, I could imagine doing something better than just sitting.
Yeah.
But it's not really, I mean, come on. Is it a big deal to just hang around? No, it just requires a little bit of you letting yourself into that mode.
It's just, I guess it's very, as soon as you say it, it reminds me of like taking a deload. Like no one wants to do it, but it's kind of like you have to. And in this scenario, it's even more extreme. It's like, well, you're risking injury if you don't like take a deload, whatever, or shitty training. But this, you're risking someone else's
or basically
life.
Like, let's take it a notch further. Because this is the analogy or the example I brought up to Katie, right? Because I have that discussion so often with people on a diet. It's temporary. It's temporary. And just knowing that it's temporary, you can undo that, right? Knowing that what you get in reward for just pushing through it, and just like enduring it, it's not that you have to live like that for the rest of your life. And just knowing that should be enough so that you stick to the plan, or just do what you have to do and what you're supposed to do to actually, I don't know, in that case, give birth to a completely healthy child, hopefully, right? We never know. You never know, right? But same with the diet, right? Especially when the contest prep. Stick to the plan. Just know that this quote-unquote suffering of a diet and this hunger sensation is just a temporary thing. It will be over at some point, right? And sometimes it's just like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Just stick to the plan and do what you're supposed to do. And it's kind of the same here, because it can probably do more harm than... No, it's not just probably, but it will do more harm than good if you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's the short-termism fallacy, I guess. I don't know if that is even a thing, but it's kind of too much focus on the short term, whereas, you need to focus on the long term. That's where the gold is. So,
you did deload as well, right?
I guess I've did half a deload. I'm now like halfway within my first week of my next mesocycle. I guess I'm a little bit behind where you are. So I've done, I just started my mesocycle on Monday. So I've done I will have done a whole week by the time this comes out, but we're in the same mesocycle. So kind of like standard hypertrophy with some metabolite techniques added in. And it's the first week. I feel like I may have, I normally don't feel like I've done this, but this mesocycle, I feel like I may have underdosed slightly. But I much prefer to kind of edge on the side of slightly underdosing so that I know, like, rather than overdosing, if that makes sense, just so that I have more room to progress with. And not that I don't think I pushed necessarily like my reps in reserve too low. I don't think I'm generally at risk of doing that, but it's more so just total volume. I think I probably could have handled more, and that may have been because I just like tweaked some movement. So I ended up Smith machine squatting instead of barbell back squatting, but I kept the number of sets level, and maybe it's just not as homeostatically disrupting, but I was kind of like, maybe I make up for that with the novelty factor, but my quads barely feel like they got a stimulus like the following day. So I was like, maybe I underdosed a little bit. I could have probably just pushed it a bit more, but I don't know. I think I probably also overestimate how beat up I need to feel for growth to have happened. So yeah, it's one of those. I just know the good thing is I know I've got plenty of room to progress in the weeks following, which is always nice. So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I haven't had I'm just looking forward to my next leg session where I get to do my superset of lunges into squats, because that's what the horrendous pump that brings. It's just there's nothing that, to me, like I did leg extensions, myo reps or knee extensions, and I just don't get as gnarly a pump from that. It's just kind of like it burns a bit and then it kind of fades. Whereas when I do the superset, it's just like, I feel like I've got a pump all the way home.
I did I did the walking lunges to squats as well. Fuck, my lower back actually was really pumped. So this is something I experience, especially like in the gaining phase, that I get sometimes a massive lower back pump, even though that my back is straight and stuff like that. Next, I wasn't wearing any kind of belt, so that would probably fix the issue for the next time.
Actually, now you bring that up, that is something I used to always get when I don't often program walking lunges unless it's for the metabolite work, but when I used to program them as like an assistant towards like my main quad work, I used to get the same. Like, you think lunges, they're not really like, I don't know, if you're holding dumbbells, they're not so axial loading or anything. You think you could save the spine a little bit, but I always found I got a massive pump in my lower back from walking lunges. So I don't know, maybe that's something common.
It's not cool, right?
No, it's really uncomfortable. It actually that's probably the limiting factor rather than the quads, which sucks.
Because it's such a nasty pump that you have to lay down, and the workout doesn't function anymore afterwards. It's not going to happen. Like, I've tried, I took then long rest times between, but the thing is that you want to accumulate metabolites, right? You don't want to rest like 5 minutes or so until the back pump has dissipated. So yeah, I will give it another try next time with belts, or with a belt, and then see whether this solves the issue or not, or whether I need to substitute it with something else.
But yeah, it's my body. I think my weight has now come up. I probably hit like a new high this week. I'm almost hitting the kind of 199. People keep messaging me like, just go and eat a big pizza, and so you weigh in 200 tomorrow. And I'm just like, don't worry, be patient. I've got 4 weeks. Got 4 weeks, and I've only got less than 2 pounds. Well, yeah, like 2 pounds to gain within 4 weeks, which is totally reasonable. So it's going to come. The really uncomfortable thing now is just like the combination of the heat with eating 4,000 calories a day, and it's just like, ugh.
I can't imagine that. And
I have to get really good at front loading calories, because what ends up happening with my day is, because I'm training twice, the actual time, I have a fair amount of time between the two workouts, like 4 hours or 5 hours, I don't know, 4 hours. But to have my post-workout meal, which is fairly sizable, it's like a massive bowl of cereal with protein shake, and then to then eat another meal and then train, I'm just like, that other meal, I'm just like, I could do without that other meal. Like, I'd like a bit more of an empty stomach, but then I've got like thousands of calories to consume before bed, and I'm just like, I can't do that because my sleep will be shite. So I need to get better at somehow finding holes to consume food. So I've just bought some flavored highly branched cyclic dextrin. I would have just bought flavored dextrose if I could find it, because I'm fine taking dextrose intra-workout, but you can never find it flavored, and then the water tastes shit because it's just like sweet water, and it's like, ugh. So I bought some flavored highly branched cyclic dextrin, so I might start just having intra-workouts with both workouts of like 200, 300 calorie shakes of just carbs just to get them in. I never thought I'd get to this point. It's crazy to me. I remember actually this is the post I was going to do on Instagram yesterday when it crashed, but it deleted itself, and it was Mike.
Instagram did act up weirdly for you as well.
Oh yeah, I think it was like a epidemic.
I thought it was due to my internet connection broke down like yesterday, because I didn't have internet for like half the day, and I just thought like, this is probably my shitty internet now.
No, Facebook images weren't working, so Instagram like is only images, so everything just wasn't loading for most people.
Good to know.
Yeah, so the post I was going to do, and actually I'll end up probably doing it today because I can't bother to think of another one, was like, I think it was 2016 when Mike came over and he did the peanut butter scale. He just said it as like just as one of his like quotes, or just him talking, and he was like, in your off season when you're really deep into it and peanut butter is like, you're like, oh, it's the most disgusting thing ever. And he's like, but during a dieting phase, it's like peanut butter is delicious. And then you move up and down this scale. And I was like, when he first presented that scale, I was like, I've never ever not liked food. I've always got an appetite. Yeah. And it's only been this off season, but I've experienced it multiple times now where I'm just like, I'm right at the top end of that. Like peanut butter can really do one right now. Like if someone was like, Steve, do you want a tablespoon of peanut butter? I'd let you like bat it away. Like, I don't want that in my face.
Yeah, but I was absolutely in that same position as well in like, when was it, like last year I think it was, where I was just like sick and tired of food, which was the first time as far as I can remember in my life, where I was just like, I seriously don't want to eat. It's crazy. And we are not even eating these high levels amounts of food such as other people are doing, such as that famous documentary with Phil Heath with Jay Cutler,
right?
Where he's then being interviewed and being asked like, okay, how is it to eat like 6,000 to 8,000 calories per day? And he was just like saying, it's just my job by that time now, and it's not fun. And just imagine, right? So many people are like, oh, I would love to eat like 6,000 to 8,000 calories per day. Yeah, but do it with, short term. And do that on a consistent. So not just like, okay, today I feel like 6,000 calories and tomorrow I feel like 2,000. Consistently, each and every single day. And not just from junk food. But really like rice, vegetables, fish, stuff like that. Holy shit. Yeah,
it gets like, it gets tough. But it's complaining on a high level. I absolutely know that. Is. But it's quite refreshing to feel it because I've experienced the low end of that scale for long periods of time for too long. And most of my life I've been on the lower end of that scale. So it's nice to be at the higher end for some time, because I think it's a bit of a psychological relief to just be like, I actually don't want to eat. Like, it's quite nice to just actually not worry at all about food, apart from worrying that you just need to eat to be able to gain the weight. So that's... And
just imagine how and what a good position you are then in before starting your diet.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm a little bit antsy to actually start dieting now. It's taken a long time. I've never really felt like that, but this final mass, I'm just kind of like, training's, I think I'm just getting to the point where training volume is just, it has to be quite high for me to get much from it. And so it's a bit like, just feels quite a lot of effort in that I should have done a primer phase before now to kind of resensitize myself in that regard. I can feel the build-up of fatigue. And then like, I think it's partly the weather and just being so big. And I'm just kind of like, I just want to see kind of what I've actually done with my off season now. Kind of just want to diet. I won't until after a couple of months now, but yeah, I'm at that point where I'm just like, dieting would be quite cool right now.
Steve, just because I have a client at the moment who is a little bit disheartened by the overall progress in the off season or building muscle mass, right? And to keep things in perspective, I mean, you are dedicating like a lot of time towards the training. So you're training twice daily, you're taking care of your nutrition meticulously, taking care of your recovery meticulously. So basically, you can say that your commitment is right now on a professional level, but you are just not like on paper a professional bodybuilder, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's funny, I think a lot of people would say yes, and they'd be kind of proud of that. I don't know if I am proud of it. I'll be proud if I have the results of a professional at some point, but at the moment,
So my question is then, how much realistically do you think that you've gained over like the the last year of muscle mass?
It's actually really hard to necessarily know, because what I base it off is, obviously we have like Alan Aragon, Lyle McDonald, Eric Helms, Mike have had their theoretical models of how much muscle mass you can gain in a period of time as someone, and I would probably say I'm advanced now, and it's quite low. So it's like, I don't know, a couple of pounds at most if you looked at all their models and like pushed it to the high end. Do I think I've gained more than that? I fucking hope so. But realistically, I just don't know. Like, when some people hold fat quite well, I don't know. I think I probably do. I don't hold a lot on my upper, like on my front, on my abs. So I probably look leaner than I am. So yeah, it's difficult to really know. I don't think it's as much as what people might think. They might think I've gained like 10 pounds. I fucking have not gained 10 pounds. I'll be lucky if it's 5, like very lucky if it's even 5. So it's probably closer to 2, 3. That even is pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want everyone to listen to that, because that is a realistic rate of weight gain, of true muscle gain, just not like with the perception that you've got bigger, but it's just like that the fat distribution is just like enhancing the look or making it a little bit more pleasing, looking good in a shirt because you're now wider, right? But this comes from a guy who's not like at his true genetic ceiling, and who's busting his ass off like for now 2 years straight, like taking care of everything meticulously. And if you're then comparing yourself to someone like Steve, for example, I think it's really important to be even more realistic with yourself, because the likelihood that someone else is committing as much time as you did over the past 2 years and is as much on point with the nutrition and everything else when it comes to that as you were is really low, really, really low. And if you are then someone who's saying like, if I'm lucky, then it's tops 5 pounds, and I think it's more like 2 to 3 pounds, with all the dedication and all the details and work you put into place. That is just like, yeah, compare Steve with yourself, and then be like, okay, if Steve says like 2 to 3 pounds is a realistic amount of weight or muscle mass he has put on, hopefully, even just hopefully, he can't really truly measure that with all the time commitment that you've put in. Now compare yourself to that. How much time did you spend in the gym? How much time did you spend with taking care of your recovery? Have you, and can you say 100% for certain that you took as much care of your nutrition and all the other variables such as Steve did? And if not, then you shouldn't be surprised that you're maybe only quote unquote gaining like 1 pound or 2 pounds in a year of true muscle mass.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, because I think I might be putting in maybe double the effort of the average person, just as throwing a random figure out there. I'm not going to gain double the muscle, maybe because it's diminishing. So I might be, hopefully, I'm maximizing the amount I could have grown in this time, which is what I'm hoping I've done. You can never be certain, but it's not necessarily like loads more in that sense. You do get diminishing returns. So yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited to cut down. I never thought I'd ever hit 200 pounds and look somewhat reasonable. So if I can, I know I will do that, because I'm already basically there, and I think I look reasonable for that. And considering my last off season, I only ever let my body weight go up to 185 pounds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's kind of like, I know I'm a bit fatter than that, but I'm not like shed loads fatter than that. I'm not 15 pounds fatter than that. So it'll be really interesting, yeah, to cut down and start comparing like for like body weights again. Yeah, I'm kind of, yeah, you always have the self-doubt. Have you even got the structure for the sport? Is it worth investing that much time? And I think I'm going to get a lot of questions answered in the next kind of year when I do cut down.
No, absolutely. Cool. Shall we move on to the questions?
Yes, let's do that.
Someone just recently made fun of us because we were always like at 30 minutes in complaining about how much time has passed already and that we didn't really find the time to answer any kind of question. And yeah, it's the thing of the Improvement Season podcast.
I think someone actually said they would like us. We could just do 2 episodes, just do a whole of us talking and then a whole one of answering questions.
Oh God,
maybe there's a platform for that. That's your typical word.
Yeah, in the future. So, Alessandro, when taking a deload during a fat loss phase, what do you guys think about placing the diet break halfway through the deload rather than at the start? I recently read something about some people doing this to have an increase in training performance at the start of the next mesocycle, but wasn't sure on how much of a difference it would make. Love the podcast, by the way. Thanks for everything you do, guys.
Very nice. Thank you very much, mate. So, Alessandro, I should say. So, taking the diet break halfway through the week, that just sounds like halfway through the deload, just sounds like you're having half of the diet break. Typically, a diet break is the 7-week period if you're kind of putting it in unison with your deload. So I don't think the claim of it will support better training performance is right, because you effectively are only being on maintenance calories if we're doing that for the diet break for half the time, versus someone who has had the whole week and they're going to be even more probably replenished of glycogen and going to probably reduced fatigue a bit faster because they've had the entire week. So only doing it for half the week, I don't think the rationale behind that you kind of brought up, Alessandro, is correct. I don't know if I've misinterpreted that, but is there places when you could do that? I think there certainly is, and I've had to do that in some cases with some of my contest prep clients who have deadlines for getting ready, where we can't afford a whole week of diet breaking and we can only take like 3 days. And so then we do just take 3 days within the deload, and that is what it is. We prioritize carbohydrates. We get as much out of that as we can. But in reality, I generally would prefer an entire week if someone's taking a diet break.
Yeah, no, I have really not that much to add, because when it comes to diet breaks or refeeds, you're not taking them primarily to aid your performance. It's more like you want to maybe dissipate the diet fatigue that has accumulated. That should, at least in my opinion, be the main reason why you're implementing something like a refeed or a diet break, not to have the capacity to push yourself harder in the gym. Because to me, it's like you're now still in a dieted state. Just because you're doing a refeed or a diet break for just 1 week doesn't mean that you are now fully recovered and fully out of that dieting mode. When you're now using that substrate that you are, or that you have consumed, to aid recovery and set yourself up for the next mesocycle, if you're now already going out there and give it a little bit more, like let's say 10 or 20% more intensity in the gym, well, sure, you could always make the argument that this is a higher stimulus and thus better to maintain muscle mass and stuff like that. You could also make the counter argument that this will probably dig into your recovery capabilities a little bit quicker, and thus you either need to have sooner a deload, or it will just seem at first that you're able to keep that performance high, but then you will already hit a wall way too early throughout the mesocycle, because the diet, you are then going back into a dieting mode, like when the diet break is over, and the negative effects when you have been dieting for a longer period of time, which I would assume when you are incorporating a diet break, will hit you much quicker than when you started the initial diet at the beginning, right? And thus I think that it gives you a false perception of readiness and a false perception of performance and strength. And if you're then going out and you feel like Hulk and blow your load like from the get-go, I think it would and could potentially set you up for future detrimental outcomes.
Sorry, I'm only smiling because you said blow your load.
Yeah, absolutely. That was intentional.
This is similar. What you said there reminds me of, like, I don't know, imagine if someone took loads of pre-workout in their first week of the mesocycle, and it's like, no, that's a bad idea, because now you're going to be extra stimmed, you're going to work extra hard, and then the weeks following you're going to be like, shit. Or
because I tried to show Dragon Ball Z to Katie, right? She basically said, like, she's too old for that stuff. yeah, we don't actually need to comment on that one because I think that's ridiculous, by the way. But anyway, now that I can come up with an analogy of Dragon Ball Z, it is sometimes you saw these fights where someone actually accumulates all their power and tries to beat the opponent in the first initial go of the fight. And then they are already completely exhausted, and the opponent just went into the defensive mode and are not even out of breath, right? And so Vegeta or so was always a perfect example because he got into rage mode, tried to give it all in the beginning, and then he was just like too exhausted to continue the fight, right? And then he got really beaten hard. And kind of the same applies to something like that in that strategy. You're trying to then take advantage of the power you've accumulated, but because it's just a temporary power burst, you probably will be exhausted and hit a wall quite early again. And then what will you do?
There's a lot of patience in the bodybuilding game.
It is. And a lot of Dragon Ball Z. So let's move on to the next one from Brian Martinez. Sounds like, I don't know, a singer or so. It does,
Martinez. Ooh.
Yeah. So in a case study where a female wants to improve her look at 120 pounds and 27% body fat, what is the best route to take if doctor diagnosed her with a metabolism that keeps her at 1,000 calories maintenance due to a condition she has? Eating and tracking is perfect on her part, and there's much improvement to be made in strength, but has several years training. All she needs is proper programming. Goal is to gain muscle and lose body fat, but there isn't enough muscle in the first place either. Where would you start, and how would you prioritize that mesocycle and or structure the macrocycle? Thank you very much.
What a question, jeez. Sounds like we're doing someone's work for them.
Yeah, kind of.
We're probably way too late for it. It's probably they're expecting their program a lot sooner. So hopefully you've done exactly what we're about to say.
Hopefully.
Interesting. I don't know if this. I mean, I guess it's an example, and that's a real thing where this person has a metabolism that is only set. It just doesn't make sense to me to have a metabolism that is 1,000 calories. It will never go up. It will never go down because metabolism are adaptive. Again, I might be because it's out of scope of practice and I don't understand it well enough to be able to comment on it fully because there's, I don't know, hormonal things involved which don't normally apply to healthy individuals or something along those lines. I'm not sure. But in this scenario, my initial thought was set her at maintenance, make sure she's eating plenty of protein within her diet, and train hard and train for hypertrophy like you normally would. And if she's fairly new to the gym and if she hasn't got much muscle mass, I presume she is, she will probably see a bit of a recomp. It will be slow, it'll be steady, but I don't think there's probably a better scenario for her right now. I think going into kind of mesocycle, macrocycle details are too much for this kind of platform right now, but we've got plenty of kind of articles and podcasts about how to set up programs for hypertrophy. That's probably what I'll do, just set her at maintenance and go through hypertrophy training. I'm not sure. What do you think, Pascal?
So at first I was a little bit skeptical about the metabolism thing and 1,000 calories, to be really honest. Yeah. But then I needed to reevaluate my thoughts because when a doctor is involved and he diagnosed her, what does give me the right to think that he was wrong in his diagnosis, because he's the professional. If there is an underlying condition, and that is definitely out of my scope of practice, whether there is actually something that causes you to have such a low metabolism, I'm not comfortable enough to talk about that or to give any kind of recommendations, because if a doctor already was involved, who am I then to say something else with just information that is like 2 paragraphs or so? I don't feel comfortable in actually saying anything about that, to be honest. Discuss things with the doctor. Trust the doctor, and if you feel like he's full of shit, maybe get a second opinion. And if that doctor tells the same thing, well, I mean, yeah.
Cool.
Nathan When planning a macro cycle, how should you approach staggering massing, strength, and maintenance phases for different muscles?
Start the question again?
When planning a macro cycle, how should you approach staggering massing, strength, and maintenance phases for different muscles?
So I don't know. There's something about that question that confused me. I think it's the different muscles. I guess this is talking about specialization or something. I guess that's what he's kind of going for, in that you might stagger them differently, because typically if we're looking at just a full body hypertrophy, you'd go for hypertrophy phases, and then your strength and maintenance phases are kind of two in the same in some instances for like hypertrophy specific, unless he's like a power lifter or something like that, where he'd have specific strength phases, but again, they'd be maintenance as well. So if you are hypertrophy specific, you spend more time in the hypertrophy ranges or mesocycles, and if you're more strength specific and you're quite advanced, you probably spend more time in the strength mesocycles, because you've already built the foundation mostly, and you're probably maybe peaking sometimes as well and doing some competitions. In terms of different muscle groups, you could go through specialization phases where you pick maybe an upper body muscle group and a lower body muscle group and set the rest to maintenance volume. And I wouldn't necessarily like progression via strength, but you might just progress via RAR in that case and not increase repetitions at all and keep volume, like I said, down at maintenance volumes. And then if you're super advanced, you might only be able to pick one muscle group and take it from MEV up to MRV, and you keep the rest at maintenance. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Have you got a different perspective on that question?
Now, after hearing your talk, I came to the conclusion that probably it's just like a question of how do you set up a general macro cycle. Right. And I think we've talked about it a couple of times already when I brought up an example, like the way that I like to do it, but we are mainly working with physique athletes, so that can always differ when you're a powerlifter or so, is to do a hypertrophy block, followed by a metabolite block, followed by a primer phase, and then rinse and repeat. That's basically what I like to do. Sometimes it can even extend that one macrocycle. Instead of having 4 macrocycles in a macrocycle, it can even be something like 5 macrocycles when the momentum is there, when everything is just going really, really nicely.
Mesocycles.
But this is yeah, totally mesocycles. But this is generally what I like to do, because it's working well. It always depends, of course, on the level of advancement for many people. But I think that because people always bring up the argument about, okay, when you are a newbie lifter, you just need to lift, right? But I think I like the way of periodizing already for these people, so that they get used of these kind of setups, right? While it isn't inherently necessary, and I don't think that periodization in it for itself is inherently necessary for something like hypertrophy training. We've seen dozens of examples where it was just like training hard, bro, right? And that works. And periodization comes from a different sport. It doesn't come from bodybuilding. There may very well be something to it to have a periodized approach, but it's not really absolutely necessary. I think there are some benefits in already doing it from the get-go: fatigue management, motivational aspects, getting used to something like that, and having a little bit of a change here and there every once in a while. It all entails and incorporates that in that kind of setup of periodization. And that's what I like, even for beginners.
I like that. That reminds me of someone I was on a podcast recently asking whether newbies should train to failure or they should leave reps in reserve, whatever. And I was like, well, like they probably don't know what true failure is. It's probably very difficult for them. But I like the idea of beginners training with reps in reserve already, because then they're prepared for in future to be happy with that kind of setup, and it's psychologically easy, because I think a lot of us kind of train to failure from the start, and then when reps in reserve are introduced, we're kind of like, this feels uncomfortable. So I like the idea of you get used to doing it.
Yeah, and it's always harder to relearn something than to learn it from the get-go. It's the same when it comes to learning an instrument. When you're doing some mistakes, right, you are ingraining that. And relearning the entire thing I did it in the past because I was self-taught on the bass guitar, and then I took lessons, and I had to relearn a lot of things because there were just like minor flaws that then had an impact on my overall speed, for example. Same goes for posing. When you like ingraining certain movements that are not the most aesthetically pleasing, and when it comes to posing, it should be a natural thing for you. You can't watch yourself in the mirror when you're posing in front of judges. Thus, it should just come automatically for you. And if you're then ingraining like bad movement patterns or so, it's not a good thing. Squatting, perfect example as well, right? If you learn a poor squat from the get-go, it's so much harder to work on your technique and redefining that instead of learning it properly from the get-go. And I think it's the same when it comes to periodizing. Being used to a setup like this would probably be the easiest thing and just an automated process instead of just training hard and then incorporating something like periodization afterwards, because it then requires a little bit more attention in the future of you, which could have easily been avoided.
Quite often it works within like lifestyle as well. So if someone has like, I don't know, a period of time where they're really busy and they kind of want to keep pushing hypertrophy, and you're just like, well, actually, we could just use that as like a lower volume phase. Yeah. And you can feel like, okay, actually, this also fits in with my overall plan. I don't feel like I'm missing out or not committing to what I'm meant to be doing. That's quite nice as well. So yeah, cool.
Cool. I did skip a question here. Wait a second. Did I skip one back there as well? No, I don't think so. So it was Brian Grant. Oh, it's a Patreon supporter. Once again, Brian, just to remind you, if you want to have, or if you want to submit a question, please do it over on Patreon as a private message so that we know and can prioritize your question. So sorry that it's that delayed. During your peak week, have you found success raising your calories progressively back to maintenance levels? And have you gotten burned by cutting out too much fat or protein in order to progressively bring up your carbs? Thanks as always. Cheers from Indiana.
Nice. So it kind of sounds like he's talking about a reverse linear load, I think is the terminology that I end up using. And I think I might have taken from somewhere, someplace. But I like the terminology because it is kind of like you are linearly increasing calories, reversing them up towards the show day. Not necessarily to maintenance. I quite often almost start people at maintenance and then their body ends up kind of taking them on and they aren't full yet. And they potentially, as they kind of upregulate to that carbohydrate intake, their metabolism kind of upregulates a bit and they end up just partitioning it a bit better. And I just get daily photos from the morning and then sometimes in the evening and after kind of sessions to get an awareness of how full they're looking and their conditioning, and then kind of make small tweaks to their carbohydrates. So I recently had Brandon O'Donnell do a reverse linear load where we basically started him on like what his maintenance calories would kind of be, with protein set where it normally is, fat set nice and low, so it's about 0.3 grams per pound, and then built him up almost by 20 to 40 grams of carbs every day. By the end of the time, he was in a fairly sizable surplus, but he was not spilling over. So he probably spilt the days after that. We didn't kind of keep checking photos. You'd hope he would have. So yeah, that approach, I like it. It's kind of the analogy I always use with peaking is you've got a bucket, you've got water in there, you're depleted as a person who's in a contest prep diet. You're just looking to slowly fill that bucket with water, which is your carbohydrates. Well, it's kind of water as well because it's part and parcel with the carbohydrate loading. So yeah, I think that approach is really good, especially for first-time competitors who haven't had much experience peaking. I think that can work well. And for competitors who kind of get a bit stressed, I think this process is quite nice because it's just kind of like just small manipulations. If you spill a bit, you can do a bit more cardio or lower, get back into a deficit slightly. It works really nicely.
Oh, cool. I mean, you're the peak week guy. You did the chapter on the upcoming ebook, The Ultimate Guide to Contest Prep.
Oh, we can plug now.
And yeah, we can plug. And there's also going to be a seminar about that in Bath.
Holy shit.
In 1.5 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
1.5 weeks.
Well, on Monday, it will be...
Yeah, 1 week.
Oh.
1 week. On the weekend. So, yeah. And there you're going to cover peak week as well. So,
excited for that, actually. Really excited.
Absolutely. So Brad Sturgis, I think one more question is absolutely appropriate. Brad Sturgis, counting calories versus going by hunger and satiety signals, specifically for cutting and bulking, but not contest prep. There's a lot of thoughts as of late that we should be more in tune with our bodies and move away from counting macros or using MyFitnessPal. But what if this doesn't work for some people, as you can be way out on your calorie estimation?
I think this is a question made for you, Pascal.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I talked about it a dozen of times, right? That I'm not the biggest fan of that movement of flexible dieting and the term flexible dieting. No, intuitive eating. Sorry for that. Intuitive eating, because just from a dictionary perspective, intuitive means just going off by emotions and not without any rationality to it. Mindful eating is a different thing. But at the same time, I have the feeling, and I have nothing against that, because I think that overall, the goal and the aspiration of becoming a mindful eater is a great thing. I just don't think that it works for many people because of our society, our environment. It's simply not made for mindful eating. It isn't. Everything what the food industry is doing is working against your mindful eating. That is what they are trying to do. They have chemists there trying to come up with the most delicious recipe there is that you can't stop eating, right? No matter how mindful you are about it, no matter how high your willpower is and stuff like that, because these are biological signals. They are kind of triggering. And that is a chemist and maybe even some biologists that are sitting there to find that recipe to just trigger your signaling and not to kind of give you an explosion in your head, right? So they are already going inside your brain to tinker around there and to manipulate you to actually go out and just can't stop eating. And that, in conjunction with our society where food and consumption, going to a restaurant and consuming these palatable foods, it's just a normal thing as well, and kind of a societal thing as well, right? Meeting up with friends in a restaurant, right? It is kind of a norm, and it's a social thing. And thing is, though, that in a restaurant, the chef doesn't care about your diet. He's only caring for his meals, that they are the most delicious as well, right? And they are playing with your taste buds and activating as many senses as possible. Stephan Guyenet talked about it in The Hungry Brain and explained it very well, what happens neurologically in your brain when these kind of things are activated. And this is something that many people, food industry, and I'm talking about the entire food industry, so restaurants, same as something like Nestle or so, trying to take advantage of, right? And because of these kind of factors, and because we have evolved with that, our generation, we grew up with that. We grew up with falling for these things and being susceptible for these things. We tasted the blood already, right? And we want more of it because it just triggers things in our head and in our biology that are so hard to resist then, right? Because it's still our instinct that is then talking, right? We can be so rational thinkers, but especially when you're starving, holy fuck. So you hear it all the time from competitors who then say like, I binged and I can't understand and I can't explain what happened there. My willpower is so high, but I couldn't resist it. I couldn't stop eating, right? And because of that, and I know that you specifically said that it isn't about contest prep. While I think that, once again, the idea behind it is a really great one of aspiring, of being more mindful. And I think that, yes, you can aspire to be more mindful, but that doesn't mean that just go by hunger signals or satiety signals, because if you're always aware of that, then you could also just track the macros and be on the safe side of things. Because both things require you to have somewhat of an awareness. That's just my opinion on the matter. And especially if you have aspirations of physique, it's so easy that you are maybe someone like Steve, for example, who's now gaining, If he would listen to his body, he would constantly undereat and would not see the progress he is aspiring or desiring. Same the other way around. If you have been dieting for a very long time, the body will trick you into eating more, whether you like it or not. I think that just a handful of people can truly pull it off. And once again, just in it for itself, I like the idea, but do I think it's realistic for many people? Unfortunately, I don't.
I really like that answer. It kind of mirrors a lot of what my thoughts are as well, in terms of, I really like the idea of mindful eating. Can you, and intuitive eating, again, I'm like, in this modern day, like, you think in past we would gorge on like animal fat, whereas now we have readily available donuts and pancakes, which are much easier to gorge on. So the body's made up for survival, and it will more easily get fatter than it will get thinner. And so trying to diet whilst like doing these things, like inevitably there's an element of control. Even if, so it's kind of like, well, there's mindful eating where you're just thinking, okay, I'm going to eat proteins and veggies and focus on that as the things I'm eating. And then there's, okay, actually just eating protein and veggies and putting it into a fitness app that takes 5 minutes.
And that's exactly what I was referring to, right? I mean, when we are living in a society where the likelihood is so high that we are overeating, we are falling short for these palatable foods, right? Because they are constantly present. They're constantly in our faces. It's even worse than being a drug addict. Because being a drug addict, you can try to avoid these areas or scenarios or environments, right? With food, it is always present, unless you are, I don't know, a monk and you are by yourself in the Himalaya or so, right? But that's probably not going to happen. And then it becomes a constant awareness of your environment and situation. And then when you are already constantly thinking and doing the math in your head of being like, okay, I need to take care of my proteins, I need to take care of my carbohydrates, why not do the extra step and track everything and be absolutely on the safe side?
I like the saying, I think it's from Eric Helms, it's kind of use the least stressful tool to get the result you want. And people often look at that face value and don't really think about it much, but the kind of stress element is very different for different people. And then the result you want is also quite different. Like some people, and this is probably where our bias comes in that the people we work with, they're paying us money to lose fat and gain muscle. And we want to do that at a really good pace, because why the fuck else would they sign up with us? Oh. It's quite an expensive thing to do, just to grow at the minimum rate or lose fat at a really slow rate. So for us, these tools are like almost essential, and these people are committed to that. And we're committed to it because we want to see, and we're probably going to be more precise with our goals. I'm not saying you can't gain muscle and lose fat without tracking, but it's just the precision there allows for more probably.
And I think both are systems. Results. Yeah, and both are systems that can be used, can be successful, but also can be totally devastating for your overall psychology or physiology, right? Just because you're tracking macros meticulously doesn't mean that this is all good and well, right? That's not what I'm saying. But these two are systems, and they require some level of effort, right? And if you're already investing some level of effort, I think why not go all the way and control, basically have full control over it, than just being like, I'm still investing effort, I'm still investing time to mindfully make those decisions, and be a little bit, I still don't know how much I'm eating though, right? I can't see and I can't see the rationale for something like that, unless you have become such a skillful macro tracker that the estimation is just like fairly accurate. And this is the ultimate goal that you want to achieve with tracking macros. The goal of tracking macros isn't to track macros for the rest of your life, but to develop such a high level of skill that you then can go out and be a little bit more flexible. Right?
And that's the way I use them, the two systems. I see them as interchangeable. So like like quite like for me, I end up going towards like the basically mindful eating. When I was in Ghent, it wasn't a case of like it is mindful eating. I'm still like thinking, oh, I need to get protein here, and I actually still log into my fitness pal and put in like some rough estimates. So I just have an idea of an awareness of calorie intake, because otherwise I could just be I'd end up under eating. That's what I would do. So that's really flexible for me, is just like having some awareness of calories and protein, and that's like I don't need it. Like it didn't stop me doing anything, and in fact it probably made me eat more that I normally wouldn't have eaten.
And I think that people seem to be in an either-or camp, where it's just like, no, when I'm doing mindful eating, I'm not allowed to track macros anymore, and when I'm tracking macros, I'm not mindfully eating anymore, which is not really the case, right? When I'm in the off-season, most of the time, I eat most of the time the same meals, same foods, but it's just I'm putting things into my fitness pal, maybe sometimes even at the end of the day, because I was going out there and I knew this has roughly this amount of calories. Thus, the entire day is somewhat mindfully making decisions or choices when it comes to my foods. Then at the end of the day, I'm plugging everything in and be like, oh, yeah, all right, I was somewhere in my ranges, right? And if I'm like off by, I don't know, 5 grams here, 5 grams there, 10 grams there, that's not really that big of a deal. I don't, especially in the off season, I think. And you still made those mindful choices, right? You still made adult-like choices. You didn't just go out there, I can't track, and thus nothing counts, and I'm just eating whatever I want. You're still like making those mindful decisions. And at the end of the day, you keep yourself accountable, check everything, and you can get either 2 of both worlds. So
perfect. No, I think that's really, I think the point there, and I think it's a good point to leave it on, is that they aren't on a either or continuum. They are on their own kind of, they're interchangeable tools that you want to use with one another.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah, that's about it, bro.
Yeah, we're all done, I think. So I'm just going to double plug the Bath seminar, just because I did have someone message me the other day saying, have you got any other seminars going on? And he was from Bath. Oh, no, he was from Bristol or Bath anyway. So I was like, yeah, we've got one in Bath on the Sunday, the 14th. He's in London that weekend. Typical. But if anyone else wants to come to Bath, beautiful city, there's an airport in Bristol. You can drop, I think we did that sales pitch last time. But it'd be great to see you there. And we have a lot of stuff we want to share, knowledge, and the ebook is coming together. It's going to be really cool. You get the ebook, you get the course, the physique prep course with JPS, which has hours of information. So yeah, come along. It'll be good to see you.
Cool. Yeah, cool.
Laters.